Welcome back. Activity in agency procurement shops is about to skyrocket because of the billions of dollars coming to agencies from stimulus bills. A lot of that money will hit as agencies are gearing up for the fourth quarter of this fiscal year. Jim Williams is partner at Schambach Williams Consulting, former acting administrator of the General Services Administration. Jim, welcome. It's great to see you. Where is the backlog potentially coming from that we could see in the coming months? Is it coming from other places beside what I suggested, or are those the big sources?
Well, I think you mentioned the big sources. I think it's definitely coming from there. The new money that's coming in, I think, is going to be one thing. I think there's also, as I see it, a bit of pent-up demand, that things have just simply been delayed somewhat through the pandemic. And I think that, we're going to see a tidal wave of money and requirements hitting these acquisition shops right now.
What does that mean for organizations that will try to pump through as many things as they possibly can between now and September 30th?
Well, I think it means a lot of things. It could mean that things don't get done, and I don't think leaders want to hear that. And, they want things normally to be fast, and they want them to be good, and they want to be reasonable price. If you're just going for speed and putting the pressure on acquisition staffs, and I'm not just talking about procurement people, but requirements people, all those people, it's possible that you get it fast, but you don't get it necessarily good or at a reasonable price, because you may be not cutting corners, you're just doing things fast. I worry about people doing too much LPTA when it's not appropriate, just because it seems faster and safer.
So that's where I wanted to go next, because the default that I've seen, you're certainly much more of an expert about this than me, but the default that I've seen over the years is that you go to low price technically acceptable when you need to just punch through a whole stack that's laying on one's desk. What should leaders be doing to make sure that doesn't happen, to make sure that these procurements continue to be evaluated in a different way?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to probably have a triage system that if you want to do it right, let's prioritize getting those things right. I think that's very important. I think you also want to emphasize we want quality. And if you're looking at all this money that's being spent through the pandemic and other things, you want to know that the taxpayers got good value for money. And that means you also have to measure that. I've talked about CPARs before. You want to make sure that we're measuring whether we got quality work out of these dollars. So I think that having a triage system, making sure you measure it, but also making sure people understand we don't want you to simply go to LPTA when it's not appropriate. We want you to do your jobs, which be smart buyers, and do technical cost trade-offs. I mean, that's something that as a U.S. government, we emphasize around the world as a best practice.
Should part of that triage process that you talked about a moment ago, Jim, be when the money's supposed to be spent by? Because I'm not aware of any deadline for spending in the pandemic relief money, but obviously if it's a fiscal year, if it's an appropriated item for this fiscal year, you got to get it out by September 30th. I wonder if maybe that should be a part of that triage equation that you talked about.
I think it has to be. And it's not only that money, but you're saying, look what happened to the Technology Modernization Fund. If that money starts being distributed quickly, people want to modernize. And those are not easy procurements, especially if you're doing something where you're doing agile, a whole lot of mini sprints. That takes a lot of requirements people, a lot of procurement people. I think you're really going to have to look hard right now as trying to match up the resources you have for this coming tidal wave.
There was a period of time 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe a touch longer, that the concept of LPTA touched just about every Pentagon acquisition that one would think about. What did we learn from that wave of LPTA that are potentially consequences to avoid this time around, if that comes back?
Well, I think you learn, particularly in things like services contracts, that you're competing with other sources for that talent, and you're not going to get the talent you need. You may end up spending even more because you're using more of a lesser qualified resource. So I also think that there's a quality standpoint here. I mean, the missions of the United States government are important to the world and to the American people. And I'm not saying that we should always pay top price by any means, but we should get the quality we need. And a lot of these things can be very risky. And do you want to, as they say, get into the elevator that went to the lowest bidder? You don't want to. You want to make sure that we've got the right best value, which is a trade-off of the quality and the price. You want a reasonable price, but you want to make sure we get the quality, because that's what affects all these missions. So much of the government's missions are dependent upon contractors. You want to make sure we get the best we can out of them.
So to avoid LPTA, is it as simple as just saying, well, we're not going to do that, we're going to do best value contracts only?
I think to avoid LPTA, you've got to have well-trained people who know how to do this, and don't think that it just simply is a waste of time. You've got to believe in it, and you've got to train the people in how to do that, how to take a proposal, look at the capabilities of that solution or what's in that proposal, and quickly translate them into what are the mission benefits, and then compare them to the cost. It's not that hard. We do it in our daily lives all the time when we make these kind of buying decisions. That's what smart buyers do. And we've got to get people to do that and not just take what looks like the easy way out is to get through the pre-award process and then pay for it in the post-award. That's like saying if I'm going to put a new kitchen in my house, I'm just going to go to the lowest bidder and hope for the best. And the lowest bidder might be the best value. But if you're not looking at quality and past performance and risk, then you're just putting that post-award, that contract management phase, into great risk of failing.
Jim Williams, thanks very much as always. Great to have you back.
Thank you, Francis.